I'm Lola.
And I'm Mamuna. Together, we have a combined 35 years of experience within the tech scene in North America and Europe.
We talk about the highs, the lows, the WTFs of navigating the technology industry and answer your questions about navigating tech careers.
This is Lost in Tech. How are we doing?
Hello. We are good.
Yeah.
We are good. I'm continuing to be the on-the-go Lola
The
for the
nomad.
podcast at the moment. New location, new recording. Nomad Lola, still do not have my equipment. So we're just rolling with it, which is making it happen. This is actually a really good test of some of my tech. Because I recently decided that when I travel for work, I'm no longer carrying my full MacBook M1 super heavy. I mean, it's not that heavy, but it's heavy enough. So I've got an iPad Pro with a keyboard attached, and that is now my travel work buddy. It's not quite the same, but it's just that much lighter and it's different. So this is the first time that it's having to play podcast recording equipment. So we're going to see how this episode shows up.
The camera is actually pretty good. Okay, Pat.
How are you? I think it's okay. Yeah, I think it kind of works. I'm like a roving reporter mode, so we'll make it work that way.
Live from the next location.
Live from.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
How are you doing?
I'm doing well. Busy. I feel like February, you no longer have the beginning of the year, like post-holiday buzz. Now you're like, oh shit, stuff has to get done. And I have Q1 goals, and you're now in the middle, and you're like seeing time tick, and you're just like trying to get the team, yourself into like high gear to get things done in a meaningful way. So I am in the thick of getting stuff done. So yes.
Isn't it ironic that you have like 762 days in January, and then you get into February, and as of the time of this recording, February's over next week. Yeah. And it's like, how does this happen that I've now run out of time in the quarter?
It's wild. January feels like forever. And every other month, it's just like, 3 days, 5 days, and it's done. But we're doing it. We're doing it. Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
we're doing it.
What's been on your radar?
Talking about. Well, talking about the Q1 goals and work goal setting and all that, I wanted to talk about return to office energy because it is high and it is loud. Not just in tech, I think in every industry, it's all about return to office. And Jamie Dimon, who is the CEO, I believe, of JP Morgan, was caught in a, candid rant about this just recently. And it got me thinking, like, I think we've lost the remote working battle fully. In tech for sure, but I think in society in general. And everyone is just being pulled back to an office. And I don't know that it's the best thing for overall productivity, but it's definitely happening, What have you seen on your side?
So I'm lucky, right? Because I get to be in a position where I'm not being required to go back into the office. But everyone around me, lots of folks are having to go back for at least 3 days at a minimum. And so it's more of this like optional sort of post-COVID perk where people are trying to build flexibility into your life and accommodate. It is now like, hey, things are back to the way they were. What I think is interesting is despite, like, it's a shift, right? So in that shift, I saw the female CEO of Citi say that she's actually not going to require people to come back into the office because she feels that it would be like carving out a big part of the workforce, which is like moms and parents.
Women. Yeah.
And that awareness is so interesting because I think therein lies a difference in how people are running their companies and thinking about the company.
100%. 100%. So I have seen what I believe is a complete gender split in leadership around this issue. In my personal and very anecdotal experience, I have only heard male leaders talk
Yes.
about the importance of return to office above all else. What I have heard from female leaders and what my personal experience is there are changes in the way that childcare works and schools and support systems for working parents. And the reality is if you are a working mother in any industry, the return to office is not a given that you're going to be able to continue to support your family in the way that you have. Even for
Right.
a lot of working fathers, right? Or, different parent dynamics. But a lot of people find that childcare doesn't work full time when you're in the office full time anymore,
Right.
in the way that it used to. And the implications are you're going to get a very skewed set of people back in the office. You're going to get younger people who we talked about before. Being in the office is really important. If you are younger, you're growing in your career, you want the role modeling. And then you're going to get a lot of mid-career men and leaders who ultimately, people who have wives at home. And I know that's a very gendered way to put it, but that's the reality of their experience, is that somebody else is at home taking care of the kids, and you don't have to worry about the school drop off, the school pickup, the meals, the after school clubs, the somebody getting sick, and your enforcement of this RTO becomes, kind of something that you almost have the privilege of someone else can take care of the life stuff for you.
Right.
I'm in a similar boat to you. I'm incredibly privileged to work for a company that does not require return to office and honestly has been built around such a distributed workforce that there is no singular office to return to, right? They'd have to open so many offices around the world.
Right.
And so I'm observing this, and I recognize that a lot of people have been put in this position where I'm either going to choose to kind of sacrifice family, or I'm going to choose to sacrifice career.
Right.
And I think if you're not a leader and you're being put in that position as well, you're also like, I don't know what to do. And I'll tell you an anecdote that I find super interesting. So I was speaking to a young lady. She's just like 3 years into software engineering. Super fortunate. She was in a position to buy a house, and she works for a company that now has a return to office. And she was very torn because her budget to buy a house was something that meant that she had to live fairly far away from her commute. But her job was now requiring a kind of a 3-day return to office. So she was in this crazy position where she was like, do I buy a house? Do I not buy a house? Do I need to buy something closer to the office? How on earth would I afford this? Thankfully for her, she made this decision not to buy close to work and to accept quite a painful commute for those 3 days, because it was the week after she'd signed for her house that she got put in a notice of redundancy, in that, there's a risk of redundancy for her entire team. So she's kind of stood there, it's like, so now I'm in a different set of dynamics, which I'm kind of glad I didn't choose to buy my house to be close to the office, because if I had, I'd now be in a really high cost of living area and not able to kind of maintain that job, and who knows where the next job would be. At the same time, I just bought a house.
Right.
And I may be redundant any minute.
Right. It's a whole different
It's a whole different dynamic. Yeah. And it is that thing where, like, if you choose to now be near the office and choose to be accessible because you've now got this guaranteed commute, but we are living in a tech era where your job is not guaranteed.
Yeah.
You come into the office every day does not save you from redundancy.
No.
It's a really difficult challenge, and I want to acknowledge how hard it is for everyone at every level.
Yeah. Part of what I empathize on for the people who need the flexibility is that tension where, I think it's a level playing field if everyone is remote, right? Because there's no sort of
favoritism. Yeah.
But now potentially what happens is for people that spend more time in the office, you get more of that like FaceTime, or more of that like, yeah, this person's really dedicated. They're going in more often. And it's not really a question of dedication or like the want. A person may want to. It's just that the obligations they're trying to balance don't allow for it, right? And I
Yeah.
think it's an important part of that to say that just because a person needs the flexibility to work from home does not mean that they're also taking care of their kids or their family at the same time, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And I think when I was listening to Jamie Dimon's recording,
Yeah.
there was a lot of, I think there's a lot of like assumptions around like laziness and
Yeah. That if you're at home, you're not working, basically. Yeah.
exactly, I call them and nobody ever picks up. Nobody's working on Fridays. And, it's interesting, right? I remember at the start of COVID, I was running an engineering team at a company, and most of the engineers would they'd work in the afternoon. They wouldn't work
Mm-hmm.
mornings, they'd work in the afternoon, and then they'd work through the night.
Yeah.
And there was this okay with everyone's create your own time, work as you
Yeah.
want. Like stuff was still getting done. They were in
Absolutely.
meetings. It was just that they were creating their own time. And that trust we had is
Yeah.
gone
Gone.
for a lot of companies.
Yeah.
And it's just an interesting shift from that time to now.
And I think personally, there actually wasn't any evidence that people who were working from home were not working.
Yes,
I
agree.
think there is almost this there's this, I'm going to call it boomer mentality, but it seems to
Yes.
have been picked up by millennials. And I think millennials as a generation who, predominantly a lot of millennials are tech leaders today, right? So, sorry, my generation.
Mm-hmm.
There is this idea that if you're not suffering, you're not working.
Yes.
And if there's no sacrifice, you're not working.
Mm-hmm.
So I think of my office days when, as a 5'3" younger lady in London, I'm on the tube at silly o'clock in the morning, having thrown my child in daycare, run to grab a train that I barely get on, and I'm stuck under someone's armpit and they're breathing
Right.
down on me and they smell
I'm gonna be late for my meeting. I'm gonna be late.
I'm stressing. My anxiety's high. I've got garlic breath coming on me. People, the great unwashed, as I call it, just to get into that office and then get on a phone call with somebody in the US or get on a phone call with somebody in the north of England. And it was the idea was I was in the office so you could see me, you could claim I was working. But what I had just gone through to provide exactly the same level of contribution in my mind was not worth it.
Mm-hmm.
And I think what the problem I see with a lot of tech founders, tech leaders, and the Jamie Dimon, we call it a rant or honesty moment that he had, candid moment, is there's this implied assumption that if you're not suffering for it, you're not working hard enough for it. Whereas I believe that what actually happens for most people who work remotely at home is you fit work in and you actually end up getting more done.
Yep.
You are absolutely losing in-person time. You are absolutely losing this implicit knowledge that gets transferred between two people. But there are ways to create space for that don't give you the suffrage version of life, which involves must be in the office at all costs. And there are environmental impacts, when you think about this across the globe, about people all trying to get to offices for the same time in the morning. It just all feels to me like it's a big, it's very old school mindset of teachers needing you to only write in, a fountain pen, otherwise, or cursive, because otherwise you're stupid. It's what on earth has writing in cursive in a fountain pen got to do with my intelligence?
Right.
This is the kind of professional work version of the same thing. If you're not in the office, you're not being productive. And I'm don't know that those two things add up. But as a thing, it's like we've lost the battle. No one believes us anymore.
But the thing so interesting is that we worked under a certain way. COVID proved that it proved
Absolutely.
it. And then there's a decision to actively go back.
Yes.
And it's interesting. But in that time, we've seen such a shift, right? We've seen this sort of frivolous, bountiful sort of expectation of the tech industry change, right? So people are it's less of this the employees have the power more, the employers are the ones that are more dominant. And so there's so many shifts in the dynamic. And I think this also has part to do with that, right? Because had this perspective come out even closer to the end of COVID, people would be like, what are you talking about? I'm not
Yeah.
going back in the office right now. No,
Yeah.
you know, but it's okay now, given employees, I think, partially feel that there's a risk at times to their job.
Yeah.
Whereas before, I think it was like, less of a concern.
Well, yeah, in an employee's market, you're fighting for talent, and therefore you have to give them options and flexibility. In an employer's market, it's like you do it my way or there is no job.
Yeah.
And
No,
my resentment with the employer's market that we're in now is even if I do it your way, there's no guarantee of a job
it's
anyway.
no guarantee, which
So
is
you're
the person ended up with, they bought the house.
yes, they bought the house. And even, in this layoff season, we've seen people move countries and lose their jobs in a redundancy, move house and lose their jobs in a redundancy. So
Yeah.
office culture is not a protection. Towing the party line is not a protection. And this is one of those hard ones. So I don't really have any advice for people in this. It's more acknowledging that this is really hard right now. If you're an employee who's trying to go up in the company, I can't tell you that following that return to office and doing what it takes is going to keep your job for you. And if
Yeah.
you're a manager and a leader and you're trying to lead an organization through this, it's quite likely you're personally challenged by the idea of returning to work yourself. And then you've got to get a workforce that's struggling with it back
Yeah.
into the office as well. Again, I don't know that there's a magic wand that's going to make the season. This is just a really unfortunate outcome. And I think it's not a good thing.
No, it's not. It's not. I think there's never a one size fits all. And I think COVID showed us that we could have both be true,
Yes.
where you could
Yeah.
have the office open for people who want to go in, and you have people who maybe just need more remote opportunities. And that's
Yeah.
also an option available because people are going to be in the office. And I bet you're still going to be in the office with everyone in your New York, like wherever you are, but you're still going to have to do calls to wherever else.
Everywhere else. This is the thing. You're going to have to do calls to everywhere else, or you're all sitting in the office together, and it's easier to talk to each other by video call because the central party of the conversation is in a completely different location. And
Yeah.
so this is one of those things where, like, it's not, it's presenteeism at its best at the moment. It's like, be there or you're not employed, be at the office, sign in. You're going to go be at the office, and how much more productive will you be? I don't know. How much more stressed will you be? I can tell, definitely say there's going to be a lot more stress on the table.
Do you lose commuting? And how much? Oh, there's so many factors, but I think at the end of the day, we empathize.
We empathize, we recognize, yeah. But there is one kind of angling back to the kind of employee side, one connection thread that will help you no matter what, right? Which is taking ownership of your own professional development journey, which connects to the other topic that we want to revisit today, which is around, what happens after you put together that development plan and that goal setting that you've done with your manager.
Yeah.
And then shit starts to get real. The work gets going in earnest.
Yeah. I mean, once that work gets going, things get messy, right? And oftentimes those structures we thought we had fly out the window. And then next thing you look up, it's the next performance review cycle, or an incident happens and you find yourself on a PIP or something, right? You're like, oh my gosh, what
How did I get
here? Right. And so it's like, okay, like after that goal setting conversation, you almost want to reverse PIP and say, okay, what does it take to be a high performing employee? And do I have a sense of this performance expectations?
Yes.
And that conversation I think is interesting. It's not a, hey, what goals do I have? But it's like the characteristics and qualities expected of me to describe me as doing my job well. And I'm not sure everyone always knows what that looks like.
Yeah, but I think it's, again, we talked about, like, you have to have the difficult conversation with your boss where it's like, okay, what does it look like to step up to the next level? What opportunities are there? Hey, I'm interested. I'm putting my hand up. Then you have to hold yourself accountable for continuously checking in and saying, this is where I'm at. Are we okay? Do we need to course correct? This is what's going on. Can we revisit the plan? Not that you have to make it the conversation every single time, but if you're not keeping it front and center, they might not be either. And I think even connected to if you're suddenly finding yourself being given a black mark because of something that is not related to expectations that you define between you and your boss, like you're not in the office, so we're going to put you on a pip, or you didn't do team player stuff that maybe you don't recognize. Taking ownership of, well, what did we agree in the beginning? And we have had these conversations. It really helps to kind of minimize the risk of that kind of thing going on. It allows them to see you, and you're the one saying, look at all the things I've achieved, or look at all the questions I've asked, or look at the ways in which I've tried to hold myself accountable to the things that you asked of me.
Yeah.
Here we are. That will help.
It will, definitely. I was, as you were talking, I was thinking about, like, from the manager perspective, like, would be expectation of me as part of that contract or that dynamic, right? Because there are two people, and I have often seen cases where the employee is trying, like they're trying to engage their manager, but the manager is busy, or they're like, doing whatever. And so they're not really holding up their end of the bargain. And so, speaking to the managers out there, I think it is very important to realize that, hey, you were once an IC, and you are judged by the success of your direct reports, right? So it is not like, hey, I'm going to jump ahead and take credit for everything my direct reports do. No, it is, hey, I have coached and I'm amplifying the impact of my team. And here's what they are doing. I'm actively involved and understand what they are doing on a day-to-day basis. And that means that you have to clarify for them and check in to make sure that they know what good looks like. So just communicating, here's how to communicate to me. Here's how I like notes. Here's how I like updates. Here's like whatever your quirks are. Like, share that with them, right? And then it is making sure that they know regularly, like, I see you, I'm available for questions. So they are actively engaged as well. So it's like very two-sided. And I find like, I've heard more than once where people are like, yeah, I'm trying to get my manager to listen to me, to talk to me, to give me feedback, but I'm not getting it.
I feel like that you just hit the nail on the head there about what that ownership challenge is, that dynamic between you and your boss, right? Because I think at some point, even if, so I'm going to come back from the employee's perspective. So you could do the manager, I'll do the employee. At some point if you are being saying, okay, hey, it's been a month since we had this conversation last, I want to bring back, I took some notes, or here are our notes. I want to pull up some of the stuff we discussed. Here's what's happened. What do you think? Where should I reflect? How should I think about that? What should I do next? It makes it very hard for even the worst manager to overlook your progress or to overlook your investment in the process. You're doing it by the book. And so it's much harder for even a weak manager to literally put you in the space where the goalposts are changing and whatever else. So if you want to feel like you've done right by yourself, ignore your manager's actions actually, and just say to yourself, like, am I even checking in? Am I even holding myself accountable for what I've done between here and there? And it's okay if sometimes you're not. It's okay if you're coasting. It's okay if you're just saying, like, maybe not so much coasting, but it's okay if you're just like, you know what, the job is hard, it's intense, I'm just in it right now and I'm focused on doing the job. But then don't come at the end of it and be like, I didn't know, or I wasn't sure, or the rules changed around me, or I thought I was going to get promoted. It's like, if you're either doing the job and you're just going along with it, or you're actively managing this process of saying, hey, I'm trying to level up, I'm trying to focus on growth, and I want to hold myself accountable to tracking that growth. And if you are doing that, even the weakest of managers would struggle to not reflect that back in your performance review, or to not act on that information. You're basically doing their job for them, right? You're basically getting it in their face with, hey, look what I did. Hey, look what I'm doing. Hey, I'd like to grow. Hey, I need help. Hey, I'm thinking about things in this way. And so you're giving them almost all of the prompts that they need to see that behavioral signal about who you are and where you're at. And certainly you're providing hopefully evidence to actually see the performance impact of this is what I've just done based on what we agreed. Did it hit the mark? Did it not hit the mark? And so it's much harder for a weak boss to come out of that. A strong boss, it'll be a joy to do that together.
Exactly.
It's a joy.
Like, that's exciting. You're like, oh my gosh, they're as engaged as I am. Like, yes, this is awesome. But I want to double tap on that weak manager comment because that one is such a painful space to be in.
Yes.
When you have a manager who, like, maybe they don't have the skills yet.
Yeah.
Maybe they don't have the interest, or maybe they're so focused on their own career that they're not looking at yours.
Yeah.
Any number of those cases can be very challenging. And so, speaking to managers first, I would say, like, it is important that we are all honing into our skill set, and leadership management is a skill set. There's so much free content available.
Can we just click? We say this constantly. It is not a free skill. It is a skill.
No.
It's a developed, invested in. Managing humans is not free.
It is not free. And it is so impactful. Not for you, for them. Your words have meaning. Your actions or lack of action has meaning. And so it's important that you are constantly developing. And if this is a topic that people are like, hey, we want to learn more about this on, please let us know. But there's just so much you can do. But at a bare minimum, I'm confident there are free resources. I'm sure there are books up the butt that can teach you about coaching and leadership. But at a very minimum, work with your employee to create a plan for what good looks like for them. Work with an employee to set an expectation of what good looks like for you to support them. That is you articulating what good looks like. It is you articulating how you work, how you will support them going forward. If you don't know how to create structures around that, create calendar invites for regular check-ins, create agendas, use GPT or any of the LLMs to create agendas, questions that you can ask them to pull information to support them along their way. Like, there's a lot that you can do pretty easily, but it will go a long way. So I think this one's like a very important one because you can oftentimes set the tone for how someone succeeds or fails in an organization.
I want to, can I stay with that for a second?
Sure.
I know we wanted to focus a little bit more on the skills and the experience we had, but I want to use what you just said to reflect on examples of leadership that we see in the world at large right now. And I think there's a real swing to this idea of like strong leadership as this like strong individual, decisive decisions, doing it no matter what, getting it done, and then it's done and everyone can see that it was going to be done. And this, and it's gendered as well. It is literally strong man leadership. And I think this is almost, if you are growing as a leader today in the workplace, in tech, there are probably all of these implicit signals around you that is the type of leader you should become if you want to succeed in this industry. And what's been overlooked are all of the human skills that we're discussing here that actually allow you to manage humans. And even if your company thinks they don't need humans anymore and they can just hire AI, you still have some human interaction. And in my personal experience, the communication skills that we're talking about, the ability to have difficult discussions with someone like, I don't think you're ready. I think you need to do more work. The ability to articulate a clear set of feedback items to someone about why they're not ready and what they need to do to be better. Those skills make it 10 times harder for you to get your team to do difficult things.
Yes.
When you don't have those skills, you will be fought all the way. And it is not about strongman versus non-strongman. It's actually about, are you just, do I understand what you're even trying to do here?
Mm-hmm.
Or can I be more useful to you? You know, can I actually help you achieve your outcome? Can I motivate myself? Can I understand where you're headed to and actually align myself to delivering on your goals? And I think there's room for a world where you can be decisive and strong and make very, very hard calls and have a very strong communication style within your team as a people leader, where your team knows how they need to show up to succeed in your organization in a way that is not nihilistic, in a way that is not inhumane. And I think I feel again, something that we're losing right now in the tone and the discourse, but it's so key. And even being able to take somebody challenging you and say, like, hey, manager, you haven't checked in, you haven't developed me, you haven't been able to, and as a manager, being able to be like, you know what, Mayor Culper, I hear you. We haven't had this conversation, instead of being like, well, you've not been doing a great job, or like reacting in a very defensive way. All of those things means you're the kind of person that people want to follow.
Yeah.
And you're definitely going to succeed more than if you weren't doing that. Not being necessarily super nice, but just having the right conversations all the time. And that nuance totally being lost right now.
Yeah, what's interesting to me is, as you were talking about, like that strong leader profile, that I'm sure all of us, we like have a person in mind when we hear
Or a
that.
few,
Yeah. And oftentimes you don't really see the team around them when you're thinking about that individual. You just think of the individual, but that individual likely has a team of people supporting them.
Absolutely.
Right?
Absolutely.
And you wonder, okay, for that team supporting them, how do they feel with that person versus potentially people who lead somewhat from the back?
Yeah.
They're visible, they're making decisions, but they also give space for their team to also make decisions, to also lead, to also have a voice, to also shine. And I bet you one of those teams is stronger than the other.
Without question. Without question. And it's really interesting how sometimes the perception of strength and the reality of strength, those two things are not always aligned in the same place. And sometimes the people who are best at being strong people leaders and who can mobilize action in ways that you are, you know, haven't even experienced yet, they're also not the people who are going to go shout and tell the world, look how good I am.
No.
So that,
but you come to them and be like, dang, like, wow, that was, you guys are killing it, you know? Like, you're just like, wow.
Yeah.
Good work,
Exactly.
you know?
Exactly.
It's very
I know what kind of team I want to be on.
Yes, me too. Me too. Me too. It, you know, we learn with time. We learn with time. Okay, so let's go back and let's try to capture what are some of the nuggets that we want to talk through with folks.
As a takeaway for this, I would say, you know, whether you're in like whatever situation you are, whether you're going to stay working remotely, return to office, whether you're facing that challenge, I think the key crux of what we're saying is, as an employee, own your plan. Like, you've done all the work to get this plan developed with your boss. And if you still haven't done it, there's still time. Get it in there before the next performance cycle. But you've got to hold on to that plan. You've got to take ownership of it. You've got to be able to bring the conversations back to, how am I doing? What do we need to do? Where do we adjust? I'd love some more challenge. I'm really struggling. Whatever that is, be an active driver of your progression, because it will compensate for your weak leader. And in a world where you may or may not be subject to like fickle requirements, you're capturing your value to the company at any given point in time. You're capturing your progression and your growth. And whether it's in that job or your next job, you've got enough evidence about what you're doing or what you're good at that it's going to help you in either case. So just own that plan, own that growth, own that progression, own that check-in, own that feedback loop. Take ownership of it. In a world where nothing else you can control, that's one thing that you can actively control.
Yes. And for the managers, do better. just let's just do better. I say it to
Do
myself. I say it to
better.
everyone. Like we can all do better. Like just do better. Know that you have a team who's hungry, that wants the support, that wants the opportunity, that wants your voice and feedback. If you're not comfortable, learn to be comfortable. Get the coaching, get the knowledge, like spend the time understanding how to deliver feedback. Practice. Find another manager and practice giving feedback, whatever it is. But we can all do better.
Do 100%.
We've made this show for you, and we want to hear your stories. We have our combined 35 years experience in tech. We have an incredible bank of experts to call on. We are your safe space. So send us your tech challenges and we'll help you create some draft decisions through some real talk.
You've been listening to me, Mamuna Oladipo.
And me, Oyelayo-Pearson.
Edited and produced by me, Michael Blissa, with theme music by 031 MASH.
Email us at help@lostintechpodcast.com or DM us at lostintechpod.